Welcome to TalkPix, your daily news about China. I'm Shariot. On September 25th, China conducted an intercontinental missile test over the Pacific. After flying 12,000 kilometers, the missile landed in open waters near French Polynesia. Although the Pentagon confirmed it was notified in advance, US media still criticized China, claiming it was a threat to America. However, from China's perspective, this missile test may have actually prevented a nuclear war, because it demonstrated China's mutual destructive capability again. Therefore, stopped President Biden from pursuing a dangerous path toward nuclear conflict. Photos released by China's military showed the missile launched was a DF-31AJ, an upgraded version of the DF-31 ICBM. Its maximum speed has been increased from Mach 20 to Mach 23, and can carry 3 nuclear warheads instead of 1. These performance improvements have deterred the ambitions of US nuclear warhawks. This is because the Pentagon's 2023 report on China's military believed that China had only 500 nuclear warheads. According to the report from the Washington Post and Forbes, the US believes only 24 of China's 500 warheads may have been actively deployed, ready to be launched at the US, while most of the remaining warheads were stored separately from their missiles, which are non-deployed. During the Cold War, the Pentagon theorized that, in the event of surprise attack, all non-deployed nuclear warheads would be destroyed. So if a nuclear war broke out between China and the US would only need to deal with 24 Chinese nuclear warheads. Currently, the US have 64 interceptor missiles deployed in Alaska and California, and the Pentagon optimistically calculated that, using 2 interceptors for each Chinese missile, they would neutralize 100% of any counterattacks. However, according to the New York Times, last year in Ukraine, the US-made Patriot system failed to stop Russia's Mach 10 Dagger missile, and even the interception system itself was struck by it. This actual combat record cast doubt on America's ability to handle China's much faster DF-31AJ, which reaches Mach 23. Additionally, over the past 40 years, all of China's missile tests have been launched from several inland provinces in the northwest. The Pentagon believed that, as long as their radar systems focus on certain regions in China, they could always track the trajectory of Chinese nuclear missiles and intercept them easily. This optimistic estimate gives some politicians the confidence to plan a nuclear strike against China. According to Chinese private media Guancha, the Rand Corporation's report titled "War with China: Thinking Through the Unthinkable" asserts that China cannot ensure at least 1 nuclear warhead would explode on the US soil, while the US can be certain at least 1 warhead would hit China, giving the US a nuclear advantage. Rather than instilling fear, this report mostly amuses the Chinese, as even Japan during the World War II, which lacked nuclear capabilities and missiles, only surrendered after 2 nuclear strikes. Does Rand think today's China is weaker than the Japan during the World War II? In 2021, retired US Navy Admiral James Davies wrote a novel titled 2034, A Novel of Next World War, which was widely prized by the US nuclear war proponents. Some people even suggested that the timeline in the book was wrong, not 2034 but 2026. However, for the Chinese, this is laughable, especially given that the US Navy is struggling even to maintain the F-35s. However, it's worth noting that, according to a New York Times report on August this year, Pranav Vadi, a senior director at the US National Security Council, revealed that the US plans to expand its nuclear arsenal to simultaneously deter Russia, China, and North Korea. MIT nuclear strategist and former Pentagon official V.P. Narang also stated that Biden has issued a new nuclear weapon use guidelines. Now, a month after this news became public, China test-fired a DF-31AJ missile, showing that Biden's strategy is a complete joke. First, each DF-31AJ can carry 3 nuclear warheads instead of DF-31's single warhead, and it can independently target 3 different locations in outer space, meaning the US would now need at least 72 interceptor missiles to maintain its optimistic calculations. Second, this time, China's missile test was not launched from inland provinces, but from Hainan Island, which surprised the US radar systems that had grown complacent. Although the Taiwan authorities claimed at the same day that they used the US-made radar to monitor the entire missile launch from mainland China, this was soon busted. A US media quickly exposed that this is just bluffing. The next day, Voice of America mistakenly reported that China had launched the DF-41 missile in their Chinese report. It is important to note that the DF-31AJ's maximum speed is Mach 23, while China's most advanced DF-41 travels at Mach 25. If the US radar had indeed fully tracked the Chinese missile, how could they have made such a significant speed difference of Mach 2 and misidentified the missile type? Clearly, if the US has trouble even detecting China's missiles, intercepting them all is nothing but wishful thinking. If Biden still tries to launch a nuclear strike against China, it would be a disaster for 8 million US people living in New York, because in a nuclear counterattack, large cities are too big to be missed. In conclusion, this missile test by China demonstrated that despite a significant disparity in the number of nuclear warheads between China and the US, the two countries still maintain a nuclear balance that ensures mutual destruction. It is this so-called Chinese threat, as described by the US media, that deters Biden's political adventurism, allowing both Chinese and American citizens to continue enjoying peace. Retired Chinese Air Force colonel and strategist Professor Wang Xiangsui points out that in January this year, 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council issued a joint statement affirming that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. China's intercontinental missile test underscores that this historic statement should be taken seriously. China's defense strategy remains unchanged. Under no circumstances will it be the first to use nuclear weapons, nor will it use them against non-nuclear armed nations. In contrast, the US has not honored these two political commitments and has instead focused on developing missile defense systems in recent years, attempting to break the nuclear balance, which is why the US poses a much greater nuclear threat to the world than China.